Hello, viewers, to the YouTube channel of Life and More. And today we have with us Miss Mamta Chander. She's a Gurugram-based management professional, and she has come out with her new book, a book of poems, A Vast Empty. The title of the book is Vast Empty. And many of you who have been reading her, maybe knowing her. Uh, for those who don't know her, I'll let you know that Mamta writes under her pen name Turiya, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, welcome, Mamta. So I'll
Thank
call you
you.
Mamta or I'll call you Turiya.
You can call me Turiya.
Okay,
Yeah, that'll be
okay,
better.
okay. Yeah. So welcome, Turiya. So first of all, I want to know why did you keep this name? Turiya means the fourth state of consciousness, right?
That's right. That is right.
So why did you choose this name?
The name chose me. I want to say that
Okay.
because a lot of the poems that I've written have come to me
Mm-hmm.
as a gift, I think. It's come in a
Mm-hmm.
very, after a lot of contemplation. And I've also been influenced by Eastern philosophy. So
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I didn't want to write under my professional name or my given name, which is Mamta, because that has a
Mm-hmm.
different facet. It's got a persona, though one can argue that a person has many different facets. But somehow
Mm.
I knew that the poems I was writing, somehow I
Okay.
didn't feel like it came from a very different space, and therefore the name Turiya was always very inspirational and just came to me. So I just decided to go with it. And it's not like I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to hide anything, because on the back cover of my book I've actually said this is Mamta. She just writes under a pen name, right? So it's not like
Yeah, that's
there's any.
right.
But I think
Yeah.
these poems to me are a gift, and I do want
Mm-hmm.
to preserve that. And there is a certain vibration to these poems, a certain theme that is resonant in all of this. So the name Turiya just lended itself.
Yeah, they come from some subconscious level. There's a
Yes,
spiritual content in it, right?
that is right. I think so. Yeah, a lot of people have said there is. It's
Yeah,
reminding them of Vedantic themes, and
yeah.
they've asked me, yeah, if I've read
Hmm.
extensively, and I can say that no, not really. Sometimes
Hmm.
ignorance is also bliss.
Okay, so these poems that are there, 55 in all, I think.
65 poems.
Yeah. So these were written like what span of period do they belong to? Did you
I would say they were
write them
written over
like
2 to 3 years.
over how many years?
2 to 3 years.
Okay. Like it just how was the process? Like it just came to you and you began penning, or you contemplated on
No,
it and you thought of writing?
I always knew that I was going to write. Ever since I was a child, I used to write short stories. And even through college, a lot of people thought that I was going to write a book, and so no one was really surprised. What was so?
Mhm.
It was just one of those days when I picked. I think the prompt for writing really came from somebody who said, "Are you a writer?" They asked me, and I must have written some really nice email or something. Are you a writer? And I
Huh.
said no, and I wrote something
Hmm.
about why I'm not a writer, and that was
Mhm.
actually very nice. And I started writing more. I started observing nature. And started being with my thoughts, and it
Mhm.
it came out like sometimes free verse, sometimes a little bit of long poems. And I said,
Mhm.
wow, this is quite nice. And the more I wrote, the more I walked, the more thoughts I had. And slowly
Mhm.
the poems also started to take a very different, sort of structure. They became shorter, they became sharper. And a lot of
Mhm.
times when I was walking, I'd get inspiration. Someone says something, and it would trigger a thought. Uh, so it happened in a very organic manner. I did not plan to write like that,
Okay.
right? I just
Okay.
started penning, and then whenever I
Mhm.
felt like writing, I kept writing and writing, and then soon I had a collection. It's only part of the
Okay.
collection that I've published in this book. There is still more. So it was very unplanned,
Okay.
I would say. I didn't sit down to write. So, there
Okay.
were weeks when I would write very rapidly and many poems, and there were weeks then nothing was there, right? Then I thought, okay, I'm done. And then something else would happen.
Hmm.
So that's how I've been
Okay.
writing, just very unplanned.
Okay. So, when you wrote your first poem, when it came to you, So, did you show it to your like among your friends or your family to get the feedback that how is it?
Yes,
That's
I
the
did.
usual
I mean,
process people do.
yeah, I did. Excuse me, I did want to, I showed it to my husband, the first few
Mhm,
poems, and,
mhm,
literally I made him read it. He said, "Hey, this is quite good." So then
mhm,
and then when I wrote, I shared it with some friends, some close friends, my brother, and they said, "Hey,
mhm,
this is quite good." Then
mhm,
finally, when I had this small distribution list of people that I would send it to,
mhm.
some very close friends and
Okay.
some family, and
Mhm,
eventually, and they're people who will be very truthful. They wouldn't want me to,
mhm,
make a complete as of myself, I'm sure, and they're very critical
mhm,
also. So for them to say, I
mhm,
think these are quite nice, was
mhm,
very nice endorsement for me. But more important, it was,
mhm,
I love the fact that they enjoyed these poems, that they felt relaxed when they read it. It kind of resonated with them. That gave me the most joy, right? And
mhm,
finally, when I
mhm,
had a good collection, I showed it to another friend who had never seen any of these poems, and
mhm.
and the person said it's very nice. So that's when I decided to publish. It's like, now I have something which I think I want to share with the world, and let
Okay.
people also enjoy these poems. That's where it started.
Okay. So, do you enjoy reading also poetry?
Yes, yes,
Is
yes, I
it
do.
like that? So, who's your favorite poet?
My
Who do
all-time
you get
favorite
inspired from?
is
Hmm.
Rainer Maria Rilke.
Mm-hmm.
He's a poet who writes in a very different manner.
Mm-hmm.
It's very lyrical. It's very calming. It's also very
Mm-hmm.
mystical. It's a philosophical poetry that he writes. So I've been greatly influenced by. I mean, I'm just amazed and astounded by the way he's thinking and the way he writes. Rumi, of course, is a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are many poets that I've been reading,
Mm-hmm.
but they're all mostly. I think poetry is really beautiful. I just feel that more people would, read and enjoy poetry. Most people, I think, are a little scared and intimidated.
Yeah, by poetry, right? You are right.
Yeah.
So, so when you like read poems by other poets, does it have any chance of influencing your own personal writing? Does it happen any times that you sometimes you unconsciously feel like when I write, I sometimes unconsciously feel that this is not my original word, so I change that. So has it happened with you anytime?
No. No, because I
No.
think while I read it, it's I'm full of admiration, and it's not like I've read lot. I've read lot in my younger days, in my school days, and then off late I've been reading poetry. But all of these are very different styles, and I enjoy that.
Okay.
But I'm actually very happy with my own style, which I feel is very simple and very relatable, right? I think what I enjoy with both Rumi and with Rilke is the feeling it evokes. So if there's something that I want, it's is the ability to have that feeling evoked in my readers as well, without really. It's not the style, the content is very different, right? The style is also very different, but somewhere I think the feeling is the same.
So, see, there are many people who, including me, who feel that poetry should be rhyming. But many of your poems, I think almost all of your poems, they do not like end with a rhyming word. So, have you come across any reader who has pointed out that to you? Or I agree, there are many poets who have that kind of way of writing. But sometimes your poems like feel like conversations, like sentences. So, what do you say
Yeah.
about that?
No, I think it's I also thought
Mhm.
that poetry has to rhyme, that lines have to rhyme, there have to be a
Mhm.
structure and all that.
Mhm.
But I think
Mhm.
mine is free verse. That's what I've been told. The
Mhm.
style of writing is free verse. It is conversational. I
Mhm.
think it's more around the usage of ideas and the context and the relatability, right? That's what I look at. I'm not, so in a way, I'm not like a trained writer or anything, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I can be forgiven for taking these artistic licenses, as they call it, because it's an expression. It's a
Yeah.
it's a creative expression, and if it
Hmm.
hits the mark in terms of relating to you or you being able to
Hmm.
relate to the poem, I think that's
Your
good
job
enough
is
for me.
done.
I mean, I write for my own pleasure, right? First, I
Huh.
have to like the poem. I have to want to read
Hmm.
it again and again. And if I like it,
Hmm.
it's okay. I mean, sometimes the words may not rhyme, but I think as long as the premise and the idea is powerful and explained in a very simple word manner, and you relate to it, I think that's good for me.
Okay. So coming to the training part, you said that you're not a trained writer. So people have different points of view on that. Like some people say it comes from inside. It's an innate, writers are born, poets are born. Some people say that no, training is necessary and it gives a shape to your structure. So what are your views on that?
I think you're absolutely right on both, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
uh, it's a creative expression. The story
Hmm.
or whatever thought is inside, it can come in the form of a painting, in a story. I mean, for example, abstract art. When
Hmm.
someone paints, someone else admires it, someone else hates it, right?
Hmm.
It's an artistic expression, it's a creative expression of what's going on in your mind or whatever. The interpretation
Hmm.
is left
Hmm.
up to you. So I feel
Hmm.
that if you're speaking your authentic truth or whatever idea it is, that's fine. I
Hmm.
think training does help, but also I think what I fear about training in a creative manner, I mean, I think the techniques and tools are good, but finally the way you craft it is going to be a very individual expression. Training, I think,
Hmm.
is very good if you're, it's about how to write. What else? If you're doing research, for example, if you want to write a novel, if you want to write a historical novel, how do you do the research, where do you start? I think to that extent training is very important, or it's good.
Hmm.
So I think there are both points of view around it, but look, at the end of the day,
Hmm.
not everyone goes to art school, but a lot of people become good, gifted painters. Not everyone, goes to a literature, program, but not all books are written by only literature experts, right? So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's a story in everyone, and there's probably a reader for every story.
That's true. That means, according to you, you are okay with not having any sort of training. It's fine.
I mean,
That means,
training is,
according to
look
you.
at, a lot of our training is also organic. We're all very well read. If you
Mm,
see, like, I must have like a
mm,
thousand books. I mean, this whole wall is full of books. I've been reading all my
mm,
life.
mm,
Uh, I could have taken, literature, but of course, back in the day,
mm,
it was either medicine or engineering, right? That was how
mm,
the choices were offered to us. So I think you don't necessarily have to go to art school or literature school to train. I think a lot of times it's about what you're absorbing, looking at the world around you, your own observational sense, how well read you are. It doesn't have to be a formal kind of a schooling. I mean, I know enough artists who are not formally schooled or formally trained, right? So I think
mm, mm,
I'm not saying that training is not needed, but I'm also
mm.
saying it is possible despite all of that also. Otherwise,
You're okay
only
with not
people,
having any training also.
I mean, you're self trained, I would say, in some
Yeah,
sense, right?
that's true.
There has to be some merit given to your own instinct, your own capability, your own motivation, your own ability to self learn. How do you write a poem? You can read from a lot of books, and who's to say that you need to go through a formal 5-year course to be able to write, right?
True.
You
True.
can even do an online course and write. I mean, I'm just saying
Yeah.
these are options, right? I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
whatever one person wants. It shouldn't
To
become
each his own.
inaccessible. It shouldn't be inaccessible, that I will only
Yeah.
read this book if you are, if you've gone to a
A
school and
trained
have a,
writer.
right? I would do that for a doctor,
True.
right? I would do
True.
that for an
True.
architect. But otherwise,
Huh.
creativity, I think, is fine. It's your
Huh.
inner voice, it's your inner expression. It's a right to be
Huh.
creative.
Hmm. So coming to inner expressions, have you come across any time while you're writing that you have hit a roadblock? Like you want to write something, but you're not getting words for it, and you are again and
Yeah,
again
many
like
times.
it happens. Hmm. Hmm.
It
How do you
happens.
deal
I
with
think.
that? How
It
do you
just
deal with that?
I think the what I've learned is that when the idea comes to you, drop
Mm-hmm.
everything and capture it in words. Because once the
Okay.
moment passes, sometimes the idea doesn't come to you as powerfully or as compellingly. That idea comes to you
Mm-hmm.
because of a series of thought processes that you've been having. Something, right? You've been thinking something, and the idea comes to you, and you capture it. I think that's one way of preventing a writer's block,
This
because
block. Yeah.
after that, then you struggle
Mm-hmm.
to capture that idea is there, but you struggle to capture it in words. The idea becomes more and more powerful. So then I think you
Mm-hmm.
just have to wait for that idea to come again or think about it, because otherwise you end up struggling. And sometimes I've just written things as prompts which I will pick it up later. So I have a lot of prompts of half ideas which I haven't had time. I wish I had captured it and spent the time. But you're working, you're traveling, you got so many things. Now I've started to
Mm-hmm.
respect the idea when it comes and try to capture it.
Okay. Okay. So you said that these 55 poems in this book are part of the entire amount that you've written. So one thing is that how did you pick and choose these poems that these will be put up in this book and not the others?
Yeah, it's a good question. I looked at some of them were very deep. Some of them were I would say I wasn't entirely happy. Plus,
Okay.
I wanted to see what the response to this book was going to be, right? So I looked at what are there are certain themes. There's a theme on devotion. Yeah, there is a discovery. There is something around life. There's a little bit about love, right? So there are three or four themes. So I decided to keep it to those themes and save the others for maybe later when there is more of a collection. Maybe I write more poems around that type of a theme. So that's how I picked it up. I can't say there was any great science, I'll be honest. I just looked at some early poems, some short ones. So it's a mix of poems that I picked up.
Maybe I thought maybe you picked up the easier ones to see the reader's reaction and the deeper themes to keep it for later on so that once people get this, then I'll take them to the higher level.
Who am I to take anyone to the higher level? I
No, no,
think.
it happens. No, it happens that like even in knowledge, even in your educational and professional work, you go bit by bit, no, step by step. That
Yeah,
wasn't the
to that
process.
extent, I think you're right. I've kept a mix of everything, a little bit of everything. There are some poems I
Hmm,
did worry that they'd be too esoteric, that no one. So you have to have a blend of, poems that
hmm, hmm,
maybe will appeal to different types of people or different. I would say maybe it appeals to the same type of person, but in different moments,
hmm,
right? So a lot of people have said that they pick up the book, they read a poem, then later when they read a poem, they interpret something else. Sometimes the best
that
compliment I got,
happens.
yeah, right. The best
Hmm,
compliment I got was someone said they were struggling with something. They wanted an answer to something, and they picked up the book,
hmm.
opened a poem, and it just landed them on that, on a particular thing which came as a
That's a,
message to them. That is the
hmm.
best compliment that
That
someone can pay a book.
yeah, that's true. That's true. And what has been your the most negative, I would say, worst comment that you've got from your reader? Any?
Not really. I mean, I haven't got, and maybe they haven't come back very critical, but I
Hmm,
did get a lot of questions. So, why you have ended this poem like this? Why not
hmm,
something else? Do you think you could
hmm,
have, used this word instead of something else, right? So, they have,
hmm,
suggested changes to a particular word. Or someone has said, I think a little too out there or something, but otherwise not very, no negative comments as such. It's more about suggestion, and it's a good thing, because people are thinking about the poem and say, you could replace this word with something else. That's wonderful,
hmm.
because then they're
So
getting
did
engaged.
you yeah, so did you follow their advice, suggestion?
Sometimes, occasionally, I have.
Hmm,
When someone said that, if you change this, or they found that it was a little too negative, they said, this is looking a
hmm,
little. Sometimes I have. Sometimes I've said, no, that's
hmm,
fine. I mean, it's okay. If I felt very strongly about what I've written, then I wouldn't,
hmm.
you know,
Okay.
change it,
Okay.
regardless of what people said. So I
Okay.
would.
So do
This
we
is my
expect
my
uh-huh.
way.
No, no, come again.
I said, this is my story. This is what I have written. So sometimes it's,
Mm-hmm.
I have very strong beliefs about it has to be like this. Then I leave it like
Hmm.
that because different people will
Okay.
have different opinions, right?
Yeah, that's right. So you are a busy professional. I would like to talk to you about a little bit about your life. You're a busy professional. So how do you manage your time first for writing?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, when I walk, I love walking. I love nature. And I spend a lot of time in neighborhood gardens and parks. After a walk, you sit under a tree and just soak in nature. Some of the ideas come in. And a lot of times I write on my phone, right? And then I would have jotted something. And then I come back and I mull over it. I think about it. I refine it if I feel that it needs something. Sometimes it's just, one shot you write. So that's when I find time. I also don't watch too much TV. I I'm extremely, I would say, frightened of getting sucked into watching a series on Netflix or something because then it's a time sink, right? So I don't I try to protect my time because it's work takes a lot of time. It's a very heavy schedule that I have. So whatever little
Mhm.
time goes on focusing on my health, family, and writing. So that's how you kind of find you have to make time. I feel it's about a
Mhm.
prioritization. I can't say that I
Mhm.
do a very fine job of it. There are days I wish and weeks I wish that I was spending a little more time sitting still and
Mhm.
thinking. But sometimes it
Mhm.
doesn't happen. But that's life.
No, no films, no OTT.
Films, I mean, I watch occasionally, but I'm not a big fan of OTT, because it just
Mhm.
tires me. And then you get sucked in, and before you
Mhm.
know it, it's 8 hours, 10 hours gone. So I prefer
Mhm.
not to. Films, if I of course I love films, but there it's
Mhm.
2.5 hours or 3 hours and you're done. It's not like 8 hours
Mhm.
and you're waiting for the next episode, then you're binge watching, right? Because it impacts your
Mhm.
sleep, it impacts everything else.
Mhm.
You're reading, so that's one thing I'm a little
Mhm.
protective about. I love reading, so for
Mhm.
me, that's more important
Mhm.
than OTT. So
Okay. So apart from the poets that you get inspired from or you love reading them, what are the other authors that you read? And if you would mind sharing with us the kind of content that you love reading.
yeah,
Is it
that kind of
fiction,
content that
non-fiction?
the kind of content that I have been reading has also changed over several years. I
Mm-hmm.
started off when I was a child with all the Chanda Mama, Tinkle, Target, the Nancy Drews, Hardy Boys, then all the fiction writers. Then there was a phase when I used to love all the Indian authors, Rohington Mistry, fantastic, Papsi Sidhwa, really beautiful, Arundhati Roy, The God of Small Things, so Upamanyu Chatterjee, Suitable Boy, everything I've read, a lot of books. I used to be a voracious reader. Then there was always, of course, some non-fiction books. I know I would read some management books and all that, but in the last several years I've started to veer towards philosophical books. The Vedanta treatise
Okay.
by A Parthasarathi has been very good. A lot of the writing by
Okay.
J Krishnamurthy, and
Mm.
then of course m- m- I think that's the whole philosophical books have started to, the last 10, 15 years. I can see that, a
That
natural thing.
explains the book. That explains the vast empty.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Because, and of course, I do love fiction. I do pick up fiction and I read,
Mhm.
and then poetry is something that, someone gives me a book, I'll read it. So, whoever give, and they know that for my birthdays or something like that, they will just send me books and I just love it. So I read whatever I can lay my hands on. But yes, this is what's been happening. A lot of the Indian authors have been greatly impressed. Then there is Alexander McCall Smith, whose books I really love because there's a slice of life, there's a gentleness to the books. I think of late, whether it's movies, whether it's books, whether I like to read something which is a little more gentle uh,
Mhm.
because there is a lot of beauty in the world. There's a lot of, strife and, anger and destruction and sadness. We all know that. But there's so much of beauty. Sometimes it's nice to focus on the beauty that's around. I
Positive
enjoy
things.
that. Yeah, positive things. I
Okay.
enjoy that. And that's also a theme
Okay.
in my
So,
in my poems, right? I want people to
Mhm.
feel refreshed, get in touch with themselves, feel more meditative when they read my poems.
Mhm.
Someone asked me, why don't you write about current events? Why don't you write about
Mhm.
other things that are going on? And I
Mhm.
said, there are lots of people who write it. They have their genre, I have mine.
Mhm.
I'm happy with what I'm
Mhm.
writing.
Yeah. So if you were to pick up one book that has impacted you the most, not among the poetry books, among the prose books, anyone with it can be Vedanta or fiction or non-fiction and anything, which would be that one book
I
you
think
absolutely adore?
the book that so two, three books. One is The Fountainhead by Anne Ryan, which I really
Oh.
love and I keep reading
Yeah.
every few years. Then and there are books like that. There's the entire Alexander McCall Smith's, the Philosophy Club series, which I really like. Then there's
Okay.
a very interesting book called Standard Deviation by Kathleen, someone, I forget the full name. One of these recent, what I do is every year during December, I pick up the New York Times bestsellers. There'll be some 15, 20 books. And December is the
Okay.
time when typically I'm on a year-end break or holiday. It's a little relaxed and I read all of those. But I think one of the most influential books for me has been the Vedanta Treatise by A. Parthasarathy.
Yeah.
That's been really
Okay.
a very deep book, which I have absolutely loved. And then there are
Mhm.
some books from J. Krishnamurti, which I have read. And
Mhm.
amongst one book which I really liked was Rainer Maria Rilke's Letters to a Young Poet. So these are
Okay.
some of the books which, and I reread a lot of books. So it's a good
Okay.
thing for me to buy and keep my books.
Yeah, yeah. Are you a member of any spiritual group or something? Since you are so much into spiritualism and into philosophy and all, there are so many groups these days. Are you a member of any group? Do
Very
you?
long back, I wanted
Mhm.
a guru, and I got a guru, right? But it was more of a guru for many people. Then I wanted someone a little more personal, and I got that personal guru
Mhm.
as well, more one on one.
Mhm.
But now I want to be, now it's like, what can I do on my own, right? Apart from having a guru. So I'm not necessarily subscribing to any spiritual groups or anything. I'm, of course, when has to come, it will come to me. What is meant for me will come to me. But otherwise, I have my guru, and then I do a lot of my own reading and self study. So I'm
Do you
not.
meditate
I do
daily?
most days.
Okay.
Yeah,
So tell us a day in your life. What is it like?
I'm a very early riser.
Mhm.
So I wake up by around 5:30 or 6 o'clock. Uh, I I go for walks in the morning, or there's some household.
Mhm.
I have a dog. I take the dog for a walk. Then there's me and my husband. We enjoy making coffee, so it's a big
Mhm.
process for us. The morning
Mhm.
cup of coffee. Then I get ready. I go to work. It's a full, sometimes 8 hours, sometimes 10 hours, sometimes 12 hours, whatever it is. I come back from work. Evenings are when I do my meditation. There is a time. If I miss the evening meditation, then it's the morning. Or find some time. But
Okay.
evening is when I find the time to meditate. It's very peaceful, right? There's that
Mhm.
1 hour where I shut myself in my study, and that's there. But and then of course, there's the evening routine. It's either calls, work calls, some more work calls, or just
Mhm.
catching up with friends. And typically
Mhm.
by 10:30, I'm off. Right?
Mhm.
It's a
Ah,
very, very mundane, very standard life.
with
Yes.
the sun. Your routine is with the sun.
Yeah, with the sun, really. Yeah, it's with the
Yeah,
sun.
but
And
that's a
yeah,
good thing.
no, it's a
That's a
good
good
thing.
thing.
Yeah, I try
Yeah,
to read
it's
something,
a good.
or
Mhm.
there's something, some courses that
Mhm.
I'm doing, or some professional studies. So it's a very, very normal life. I think in
Mhm.
between, I'm always looking for ideas. So some ideas
Mhm.
come to me. It happens. But I think what I really like is my morning walks in nature
Mhm.
and my evening meditation. Those are the two things
Okay.
I don't want to compromise, and I try and rearrange my entire life around it.
Okay. Okay. So as we come to an end of this session, I would, you are a high flying management professional, right? So I want to ask you, what advice would you like to give a young management guy to, because there's a lot of stress these days.
Yeah.
So one pertaining to the job that you're doing, and one I want to ask you for your advice to the any other upcoming writer, because writers normally they get publishers with a lot of difficulty. Now, of course, these days there are self-publishing thing has come in. But what would you advise a writer? How to go about it?
Okay. I'll answer the question around professionals, right? From a professional
Yeah.
life, right?
Mhm.
What
Mhm.
what I have learned is
Mhm.
one, whenever you compare yourself, we always end up comparing ourselves to someone who's so doing much better, and we don't necessarily look at how well we have done and how much better we are doing from a lot of people, right? I think that adds to a lot of stress unnecessarily.
Mhm.
Staying relevant is very important for all professionals. Even now, I continue to do my certifications around a variety of new subjects that are coming, whether it's sustainability, whether it's Gen AI, all the new things. So, staying relevant is very important no matter what your age is. And the third one that I would tell people is to read. I think reading is one of the most, you know, um, highest return on investment habits that we will get, because once you get into that reading, whether it's a newspaper, whether it's a magazine, whether it's an article, it just
Mhm.
expands your horizon and your knowledge. And I feel that's very
Mhm.
important. And it's
Mhm.
very difficult. I get it, because there's so many distractions and pressures on our time. There are a million things that we could do now. I mean, back in the
Mhm.
day when I was growing up, there was no internet and all of
Mhm.
that. There was, two channels
True.
on DD, and 91 is
Mhm.
when we had all the MTV and everything else, right? Otherwise, if you just read
True.
or played or something. So I think
Mhm.
it was easier for us rather than it is for the new generation. So I'd still say
Yeah.
find a way to imbibe knowledge and stay relevant,
Mhm.
because that's needed every time. Even in my profession, in my role, I can't
Mhm.
sit complacent. I have to keep upskilling
Mhm.
myself. So that's how
Mhm.
the whole self training also comes in, because now it's ingrained in you to do self training, go to YouTube videos, do courses,
Mhm.
all of that. When you, the other thing I would say is, do not compromise on sleep or on health, and that's very important. When we are young, I think we end up thinking we are super men and super women, and we glamorize stress. I think that's really bad, right? We, our offices replace us very easily, but we're not replaceable by our families. So I think that's very important to keep that in perspective, and know that you have a 30-40 year career. So 1 year, if you don't do very well, you don't get that promotion, it's all right. 1 or 2 years, in a 40-year career, I think it's fine. So that's my advice to professionals. And
Mhm.
for writers, I think two things. One is, if you feel that you have something to tell the world, you should share. It's a lot of hard work, and maybe you run into a lot of disappointments. But one thing I have, and for me this is maybe more philosophical, that once the book is out there, do what you have to let people know you've written something, you think it's important for people to read it, that they'll benefit from it. Then you have to do your best to get it to as many people. But once you've done
Mhm.
that, I think don't get too attached to, why isn't it on this list and that list and what's happening. I think there's a sense of detachment also has to come to it. Otherwise, you're not going to move on to your next creative, project. You're going to be too hung up on something that you're doing. So that's what I'd say, keep writing and don't worry about sales
And
and marketing
yes,
and
the
all that. Not
criticism,
too much.
also the criticism and the appreciation.
Yeah, exactly. Both. You're right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Don't let the appreciation go to your head, and don't take criticism to your heart.
True, true. So, when is your next book coming? Do we expect your next book anytime soon?
I'm hoping this year, if I get the
Mhm.
time. It actually, writing is one part,
Mhm.
but putting it together, thinking of what is
Mhm.
the title and everything, I think that takes a lot more effort. So I'm hoping
Mhm.
maybe in the next 6 months, I should be able to
Okay.
find the time to compile and bring it out.
The rest of the poems.
The rest of the poems and the ones that I've been writing also.
Okay. Okay. So we wish you all the best for that. And
Thank
we
you very
hope
much.
that you are able to stick to your routine and your timeline that you've thought for your next book. And all the best. Thank you so much for talking to us. Bye bye.
Thank you. And I would just like to
Yeah.
show people that this is the book in case someone
Yeah.
misses, right? And it's
Yeah.
available
Yeah.
on Amazon. So please do check it out. And I hope it, it resonates with you.